Hello, I am recording a bit of a late video today because it is Friday and I didn't do a video for Thursday on Thursday because we had a 3-course meal and then I went for drinks at the bar, and I did try to record a video this morning to catch up, and unfortunately I didn't have enough space on my phone to record the video, so this is quite overdue. I'm now out of Clore. I am in a hotel in Winchester where I'm staying for the night. But yeah, I just want to do a few reflections in a video on the Thursday at Clore Leadership Pulse. A day that was primarily focused on honest conversations. First things first, initially I kept referring to the session in advance as difficult conversations, which is quite interesting because conceptually it's almost the same kind of thing in terms of the session, what it was about. But it's interesting about the kind of negative connotations of saying difficult conversations as opposed to saying honest conversations, which are about having a reason for having a conversation that could be difficult, having a purpose and understanding it. So, and that's the motivating factor behind it. So anyway, so we did a big session with Sarah Cartwright, did a full day basically on honest conversations. And it was, it's interesting that pretty much everyone said that they struggled to have those kind of conversations at work. Also to a degree in personal lives, but I guess professionally, particularly, having honest conversations is something people find quite tricky, because there is that connotation that honest conversations we think about as being difficult and negative conversations. So it's about talking about things that don't come naturally, that we feel like it's difficult to address head on. But we also talked about the importance of doing that and saying that actually, in a way, if they are difficult conversations and honest conversations, they need to happen. That's the thing. You need to do these things head on in order to be able to address the issues. So we looked at different models of honest conversations, and we looked at things like giving feedback and all those kind of things that tie into that area. So it was something that people tend to do is catastrophize those kind of conversations and think, oh, if I raise this issue with somebody, they're going to act really negatively, they're going to reject it, they're not going to behave in the way that I hope they would, and I'm going to therefore avoid having that conversation. And one of the things that Sarah was saying is absolutely something that I recognise in terms of my own experiences in the many years that I've been doing theatre work, is so often Sarah's gone into organisations and an issue has been flagged up, and when she kind of investigates how long it's been going on, it's quite often like years. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10 years. The issues have been in place because nobody feels comfortable or able to address that issue head on. So rather than actually kind of fix the problem, as it were, people get stuck in creating a culture that's a negative culture, that it's a bit of a toxic culture, but people feel like that's better than potentially exposing the issue and being able to fix it. And that's fascinating. It's fascinating kind of human psychology stuff that yeah, we would rather live in a position of discomfort because we're worried that the consequence could be even worse, when also the other side of it is the consequence could be much better. So it's not like we're talking about neutral, going, nothing really an issue, if we bring it up is going to blow things up. We're going, it's a bad situation already, and we're talking about maybe trying to fix it, and we'd rather not. We'd rather just be like, okay, let's just suffer in silence. Let's not tell that person the things that they do that upset or offend me or that are problematic. Organisations go through periods of staffing change because people leave because of those things. And people still don't want to head those issues off. And it's like, you talk about it, you're like, of course it's stupid, but I think we can all recognise those kind of things. And I think it happens in a personal life as well. You don't address an issue that should be addressed, and then it becomes quite toxic and things get worse because you haven't addressed it, and then it gets bigger and bigger. So being able to have sessions about how to deal with that stuff is quite useful. One of the interesting things, there was a matrix that Sarah showed us of a kind of 2 axes of an axis that's about challenging directly, and then the other axis that's about caring personally. So it's kind of the XY axis. And within that axis, there are different points you land on, which kind of address those different access points to different degrees. So at the lower end, in the kind of the lowest level of both axes, you're talking about passive aggressive behaviour. So you're not addressing an issue directly. You're also not considering the personal care for yourself and the person you're talking to. Now, if you go more about challenging directly but less about the personal care, your behaviour can be quite aggressive. If you're thinking more about caring personally but less about challenging directly, you get a bit more passive, because you go, I don't really want to make an issue. So I'm not going to challenge directly, but I don't want to upset them. And then you become more passive. So where you want to be, in a way, is ideally in the upper level of the top corner of challenging directly and being personally caring, which is being direct. It's being assertive. It's assertively saying, I need to talk to you about this. This is a thing that we need to work through. And we were told about a model that is, it's the BIF model, which is about giving feedback, and that's about honest conversations. So it's BIF, B-I-F-F. So the B is about behaviour. So it's saying, this is the behaviour that is problematic. I is the impact of going, how it's impacting. So this is what it is doing. F, first F for feeling, so how I feel about it or how people feel about it. And F, the final F is future, so how we're going to address it. So it's like saying, you are being constantly late to work, which is the behaviour. The impact is, it means that work isn't getting done and other people are having to take on responsibilities. F for feeling is, I feel really disappointed that you're not turning up on time, and it makes me question your commitment to the team. And the F future bit is going, what can you do to make sure you're turning up on time at work? That's a very kind of simple thing. It's being able to address the issue in those kind of points like that is quite a nice way to structure those conversations. And you know, it's all about changing the behaviour, I guess, and the issue that's happening to be positive. Now, it's also about being direct, because you can always go, oh, hi, how are you? How's everything? That's wonderful. I kind of want to talk to you about something. And people get immediately quite defensive about that stuff, because like, oh, hang on, this is a bit disingenuous, this kind of caring how I am, and then you're not going to address the issue directly, so I'm already preparing myself to be defensive. Being able to go in and say, I want to talk to you about something, this is the issue, is the ability to go, it's about dealing with something directly. You're dealing with facts as well, trying to avoid bringing emotion into it too much, and going, this is what is happening, the behaviour is this, the impact is this, is quite a useful skill. And you know, if you're on the other side of a conversation, you can kind of use that model as well. If somebody's trying to tell you something, you can ask them to phrase it in that way. If you feel like they're not being direct, you can be like, look, let's just be direct. What am I doing? What's the impact? How do you feel about it? And then we can talk about how we fix it. So you can understand that from that regards. You know, in terms of having a conversation as well, you know, when you're dealing with somebody else, you want to listen to them carefully and pay attention, and think about how you can reflect back their words and their behaviours to them. There's a whole thing about communication, about the ways in which we communicate with each other, person to person. And there was a bit of kind of research that Sarah shared with us about statistics, which was body language is 55% of your person-to-person communication. Your voice is 38%, and only 7% is actually the words you speak. We had the Maya Angelou quote that was used yesterday, which was, people won't remember what you said, what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that's kind of, again, it came up in this session for that very reason of your body language will tell so much. So if your body language in a meeting conversation is very, you know, relaxed and you're not really engaged, your voice is trailing off and all that kind of stuff. Now that's a tell, that's a read you can do on somebody. And that's somebody can do on you. So if you're trying to have an honest conversation, but you're kind of not really into it, then that's not a great way to communicate. Even if the words are the correct words, the fact that you are not engaged in all levels is something that people will pick up on. So, you know, body language, you can kind of struggle with the words, but you need to show the intention is behind them, and people will respond to that accordingly. there's a two-way conversation we're talking about. It's not going, I'm going to tell you off. It's going, there is a dialogue here. It's conversational rather than being difficult. Things like making eye contact. Making eye contact is an important part of interpersonal relationships. If you can't be bothered to look at anybody, just looking around, up in the air, checking the time, that's not engaging. And people are going to likely respond accordingly to that. So that's something to bear in mind, and also to be paying attention to that stuff if what other side of the conversation you're on, because you can try and influence the way in which that conversation happens accordingly to what you feel is the most productive way to deal with that stuff. It was also a conversation about making an ask is an honest conversation. So for example, might be asking for a pay rise or a promotion or whatnot. And that's a really interesting thing. People were like, oh, I really don't like doing that. I feel really uncomfortable about doing that, which is a very British thing. We don't like to ask for what we want because we're British and we're incredibly reserved and polite, and we'll have a bitch with people about things, but we don't address those things head on. So that's a different kind of direct conversation. And just ask, that's one of the advices. You don't ask, you don't get. That's an obvious thing. But if you know what you want, why not ask for what you want? If you can articulate your case, if you can be evidence-based, don't be too emotional about things. And if you believe there's a chance that you can get what you're asking for, then carry it forward. It can be a negotiation. That's absolutely fine. But go for it. If you don't ask the question, you're never going to get the thing. And you can't sit there and complain about not having a pay rise if you've never asked for a pay rise, because how is anybody necessarily going to know you want a pay rise? I know I've done that stuff. Absolutely know I'm guilty of that kind of thing. So, so putting these things in context in Clore is really useful. And you can kind of reason and you can ask somebody for their feedback on things. Again, what do you think about me saying this? What do you think about my ask? Well, this is my ask. What do you think? And see how it goes. And, if you're asking in that way, as a direct way, that's a good way to do it, rather than skirting around each again. If you're starting to say, hey, how are you? How are the kids? Nice weather we're having. So I kind of wanted to talk to you about something. That's the stuff that's going to make somebody go, oh, hang on a second. This is going to be a tricky conversation potentially. I'm getting in my defensive position to kind of shut that down. Don't prepare that stuff. And also similar lines, we had a conversation about saying no. A lot of us in the arts are really bad at saying no because you feel like you want to give people time and support and whatnot, and you don't want to put people off or devalue what they're doing. So sometimes it's hard to directly say no. There's an interesting thing with like programming of work. There was a conversation on Twitter a while ago that was artists saying, venues, just tell us if you don't want our show, because a lot of things that happen in programming, and I know I've done it as myself, is saying to us, it doesn't really work for us right now, but maybe come back to us in a bit and we can talk about it again. And you might look at stuff and go, doesn't really fit our programming at all. But you don't want to be so direct sometimes because it feels, again, very Britishly, feels rude. So you just park things. And then the problem is when you're parking it, it just comes back around again and again and again. And that's not very helpful for anybody. So being able to say no and go, thanks for getting in touch. With the information about your show, we're not going to be able to program your show, and here is why. At least you're being direct and being honest there, rather than going, yeah, it sounds really great, you're doing wonderful things, and, obviously at the moment we've kind of made commitments, but maybe some point in the future, and you might know that's not the case, but you don't want to be rude. That's stuff that is, is being brought into focus by the kind of Clore stuff that we're doing. It's, there's a lot of things that feel quite obvious, but getting it laid out in a course is really useful. So that's all been really valuable. And then in the other kind of honesty field, I guess, really, we've done a friends and family exercise, which is we were told to ask friends and family, 3 people minimum, to give us some positive feedback. So it was to say, what do they perceive as being our positive values, what's our impact on them, so on and so forth. And we were asked not to look at the feedback until basically when we got to the course and just before the session. So as I kind of highlighted in my last video, lots of envelopes of people's feedback, and I read through them, and it was really lovely. It was really, I'm not going to go to detail of what was being said because it is a personal thing, but it was really nice to have people who are close to you giving you positive feedback, and for you to look at it and go, yeah, I kind of recognise that part of my behaviour, and it's quite nice to see people who you're close to and care about say nice things about you. And we can be quite uncomfortable with taking positive feedback. So it's quite a good exercise, but also the fact of then going, you know what your core values are and what you do. It's fascinating to see a number of people reflect certain things back on you and go, oh, actually, maybe you didn't realise that was quite such a big thing for you, or maybe you did, and it's really nice to have that kind of that reassurance and that reflection back that is something that's a big part of you. So that was also a really nice exercise to say we all did it. A lot of us were saying it'd be really nice to be able to turn around to those people again and say, here are the nice things about you, because it's quite nice to give people compliments even though we struggle to receive them sometimes. And we did that exercise and we went into having dinner together, and then people were in quite a good place, I think, and then we had conversations and went for drinks and things, and it was just a nice thing about the day of weirdly opening up and going, oh, we're going to have a difficult conversation session, and that's quite intimidating, to then be like, hey, it's been really nice and we're really positive about things, and we could talk quite openly and honestly about how we were feeling, but also addressing the fact that the honest conversation session kind of wasn't as scary and difficult as we thought it would be, because it plays so much to our human emotions and our values, and Clore's so good at putting so many things that you do and you believe into context, into a framework that you maybe don't recognize exists. So I thought this before in the last residential, like action learning, for example, I do so many things, have so many practices and been involved in so many things that reflect the action learning model. Never knew that was what was happening. That's just a thing. And that was a really it's always a really nice reflection to have of coming to Clore, of being like, okay, actually it's reassuring me a lot of things that I do and say and behave upon and act and believe are actually real things. They're not just weird stuff I've made up in my mind. So that was a really lovely kind of process, and and again, as a group, we're getting time to have around the sessions, to have meals together and socialise together, to really get to know each other and to keep processing a little bit. And it's one of those things about a lot of programs where you can do a day of training and you can just get on a train and go home, whatever. And sometimes that drops everything that you've been learning. And I know I do it quite a lot, as I do things and I do training and I have learning moments. And then I get home and I'm travelling home and I'm already out of that bubble. And I'm not reflecting on it enough, because I just go, right, pop on my headphones, listen to some music on the train home. And then there's a point later on where I kind of remember it, but being able to keep the conversation going in our own way is a really nice thing to be able to do. So yeah, it was, there were a couple of moments in it where I had like slightly revelatory moments during the course of the day, of really recognizing behaviors or patterns or beliefs that were really, it was really useful to have that. And again, we have this time and space to reflect on ourselves in that way. So big thumbs up to Clore again for that opportunity to have that learning. So yeah, this is a really lovely chance to reflect on stuff. But yeah, we've had a final day, which I'll do a video for later, but that was a particularly strong day. Weirdly, Thursday last time was quite a big day for those revelations and personal stuff. I don't know if it's a Thursday thing maybe at Clore, that you have the big days, but whereas I had some problems with the Thursday last time, this time it's been a really positive day. It was very well facilitated. It was really positive outcomes, and it's as always been a really positive experience being on Clore. So really grateful for it, and so many things that I've learned again from being here and from the kind of methodologies and the practical ways of doing things and the exercises that are really useful moving forward, and I'm certain that I will continue to use moving forward. So being able to have another day has been quite nice, and even if it's a smaller day on Friday, it's been great learning there, and knowing that we keep building these relationships with each other and we keep learning. It's great, and I'm very positive about the whole Clore experience, as I'm sure you can tell from these videos. So yeah, that was the Thursday. So obviously we've done Friday now. I will reflect on Friday later. But yes, I just thought I'd quickly check in about Thursday, having nearly not been able to do so for technical reasons, shall we say. But yeah, so that was Thursday, and yeah, I'll talk about Friday in the next video, but that was just a little reflection for Thursday for you. So basically, honest conversations, not as difficult as people think they might be. So that's the kind of main learning, I guess, from the day for me. So yeah, that's it for Thursday. So I will do a video on Friday shortly. So I will speak to you later. Bye.